Also in the UK, King Charles III has made his youngest brother, Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh. The title was last held by their father, Prince Philip, from 1947 until his death in 2021.
For most of his life, Prince Edward occupied a peculiar position inside the House of Windsor. He was always present, always dutiful, always reliable, and almost always overlooked. He was not the rebellious son, not the disgraced brother, not the glamorous heir, not the runaway prince. He was simply there, moving through the machinery of royal life with a kind of disciplined quiet that tabloids rarely reward. In another family, that might have made him forgettable. In this one, it may have made him dangerous, because the British monarchy has always had a blind spot for the quiet ones. It underestimates those who do not compete openly. It overlooks those who do not leak, complain, or perform ambition. Yet in palaces, just as in politics, power does not always belong to the loudest person in the room. Sometimes it belongs to the person who understands when to stand back, when to show up, and when absence itself can become a statement. That is why Prince Edward has suddenly become so interesting. On the surface, nothing dramatic has happened. No public declaration, no formal palace split, no explosive interview, no memoir, no headline announcing war inside the family. And yet, if you watch closely, not the speeches, but the arrangements, not the statements, but the patterns, something appears to be shifting. The younger brother, who spent decades being treated like background decoration, now seems to be moving with far more intention. And if royal watchers are right, those moves may not only reflect a cooling relationship with Queen Camilla's orbit, they may reflect a deeper calculation about the future reign of King William. That is where this story becomes much bigger than gossip, because monarchy is built on symbols, and symbols are rarely random. A place at an event, a carefully timed absence, a senior royal taking up engagements without another figure nearby, a family member appearing beside the next generation rather than the current center of power. None of this is ever entirely accidental. In royal life, choreography is language, and when the choreography changes, it usually means the politics have changed first. Edward has spent much of his public life accumulating something that matters more now than it once did: trust. He and Sophie have quietly built a reputation for doing the work without demanding attention for it. Overseas visits, patronages, difficult schedules, unglamorous commitments. They have taken on a great deal with very little fuss. While other senior royals have dragged scandal, ego, or instability into the frame, Edward and Sophie have offered the institution something it values more and more as it becomes harder to find: steadiness. That steadiness now has real political weight. In any monarchy, popularity is not just vanity, it is leverage, and the numbers have become increasingly revealing. If public feeling turns against one figure while remaining solid around another, palace officials notice, the sovereign notices, the heir certainly notices. That is why the contrast between Edward and Camilla matters. It is not simply that Edward is liked, it is that he is liked without seeming to try. Camilla, by contrast, remains stuck with the burden of her own history. No matter how diligently she performs her role, she still carries the story of how she entered the monarchy. She can command respect, she can carry out serious work, but she cannot erase the emotional memory that shaped how the public first saw her. Edward never had that problem. He had the opposite one. He was too quiet to matter until suddenly quiet began to look like an asset. And that may be the key to everything. Because right now, the monarchy is not merely trying to survive the present. It is arranging itself around the future. King Charles is still on the throne, but the gravitational pull of the next reign is already strong. William is no longer a distant heir waiting in the wings. He is the center of the monarchy's coming shape. Everyone in the family knows this. Everyone who serves the family knows this. And consciously or not, people are beginning to position themselves accordingly. This is where Edward's role becomes especially intriguing. He does not need to declare allegiance to William. He does not need to criticize Camilla. He does not need to announce anything at all. He simply needs to be seen where he is seen and not seen where he is not. In palace life, that is more than enough. stand beside William's family at the right moments, step into useful spaces when needed, keep a measured distance from factions that feel tied too closely to the current queen consort's influence, and the message begins to write itself. Slowly, silently, elegantly. The symbolism of that positioning becomes even sharper when set against the background of Camilla's own public signaling. Royal jewelry, particularly brooches, has always carried meaning beyond decoration. Senior royal women understand this perfectly. A brooch can mark mourning, tribute, alignment, memory, or authority, and it can be chosen for sentiment, yes, but rarely without awareness of what it communicates. When Camilla appears in pieces associated with Charles's reign or symbolism closely linked to the crown, she is not merely dressing well. She is reinforcing place. Her jewelry says, "I am part of this center. I belong here. I carry this authority near the heart." Edward and Sophie operate differently. They do not answer symbolism with competing glamour. Their language is not jewelry, it is discipline. Their statement is not "look at us," it is "note where we are." That contrast matters. Camilla's method is visible assertion. Edward's is strategic restraint. In royal politics, restraint can be more effective than display because it tends to attract less resistance while shaping more perception. And perception is everything.
King Charles and Queen Camilla have put on a united front at an awards ceremony in London. The royals attended the Queen Elizabeth Prizes for higher and further education at St James's Palace. Around 19 universities and colleges were recognised for their innovation and excellence.
Take the Easter appearances that caused so much quiet discussion. The return of William, Catherine, and their children had enormous symbolic value, all by itself. It projected health, continuity, family unity, and the unmistakable re-emergence of the Wales household as the monarchy's emotional center. In that picture, who stood near them mattered, and Edward was there, not theatrically, not as an intruder into the future, but as part of the frame, part of the structure, part of the visual story of what the next chapter might look like. That is how palace reordering happens, not with public declarations, but with frame composition. Who is next to whom, who arrives with whom, who appears to belong to the coming era, and who seems increasingly tied to one that is quietly ending. Camilla's problem is not simply that some people dislike her, it is that her authority is inseparable from Charles's. She is queen consort because he is king. Once that changes, her place must change too. Edward's authority, by contrast, is not rooted in a marriage or in public sentiment alone. It is rooted in bloodline, service, and an image of personal reliability that survives changes in the central couple. That makes him unusually valuable during transition. And Andrew's collapse only sharpened that value. When Andrew imploded, the monarchy didn't just lose one senior figure, it created a vacuum. A family already operating with a narrowed working core suddenly had even fewer dependable senior royals to lean on. That vacuum had to be filled by someone. Edward, almost by default and almost without acknowledgement, became more necessary. But necessity can change a person's standing over time. It can turn the formerly peripheral into the quietly indispensable. What makes Edward especially effective in this environment is that he does not appear to enjoy the struggle. He looks like someone managing through it, not feeding on it. When Andrew became a problem, Edward did not publicly moralize. He did not center himself. He did not theatrically distance himself for applause. Reports suggested he handled family difficulty in the way palace institutions prize most, privately, practically, without fanfare. That is not glamorous, but in monarchies, glamorous people are not always the ones trusted with continuity. Practical people are. Camilla, meanwhile, has had a more complicated time consolidating emotional legitimacy. Even after the coronation, even after years of careful repositioning, even after public causes and dutiful appearances, her place has remained harder than it looks. She is queen, yes, but she is queen inside an institution already obsessed with the next queen. Catherine's popularity, Catherine's symbolism, Catherine's recovery, Catherine's family role, all of it creates an unavoidable contrast. Camilla holds the current title, But Catherine increasingly holds the public imagination. Edward appears to understand this landscape with unusual clarity. He is not competing with Camilla for glamour, nor with William for future kingship. He is doing something much shrewder, becoming indispensable to the transition without making himself seem hungry for it. That is the ideal position for someone like him. He can be the brother who never caused trouble, the uncle who supports the heir, the senior royal who gives the next reign seriousness and continuity without cluttering it with ego. And Sophie matters enormously in this. Royal spouses are not side characters. They are amplifiers, buffers, and co-strategists, whether the palace publicly admits it or not. Sophie's absences and appearances therefore draw attention precisely because she has been so consistently effective for the family. When someone like Sophie misses an event, observers notice, not because every absence is a plot, but because in royal life, timing is almost always telling. If Edward and Sophie increasingly appear selective about where they place themselves, then that selectiveness becomes part of the broader pattern. Careful alignment, not open conflict. This is what makes the whole situation feel less like a feud and more like a repositioning. People often misunderstand royal power because they assume it operates through command. It rarely does. It operates through acceptance, through who becomes natural to the frame, through who feels effortless in the next arrangement. Edward is beginning to look effortless in a post-Charles royal structure. Camilla, for all her current status, does not. That doesn't mean she will be humiliated or cast out. It means her role may shrink in emotional centrality the moment the institution no longer needs her to legitimize Charles's story. And the institution always puts the future first. That is the final truth beneath all of this. The monarchy is not sentimental in the way outsiders imagine. It can tolerate sentiment, use it, package it, and display it. But at its core, it is an engine of continuity. It asks not who suffered most, waited longest, or wanted the crown hardest, but who best secures what comes next. At the moment, the answer to that question lies overwhelmingly with William and Catherine. Around them, a supporting cast is quietly settling into place. Anne looks fixed. Edward increasingly looks fixed. Sophie, too. These are people the future king can rely on without emotional complication, without public baggage overwhelming the role, without blurred loyalties. That matters.
As the king and queen leave the thrones and head for the exit of Westminster Abbey on the coronation Saturday, you'll see that everyone bows and curtsies to the king, and no one moves a limb, a muscle, when Camilla passes. And that was because they were angry with Camilla.
Because when William's reign comes, the front rows will already have been chosen long before the coronation music begins. Not formally, perhaps, but psychologically, institutionally, visually. The people standing closest to the future will be the ones who understood early which way the monarchy was moving. Edward seems to be one of them. He has spent most of his life being underestimated because he never played to the gallery, but perhaps that was always his advantage. The family learned to look through him, the press learned to ignore him, the public learned to file him under steady but dull. And all the while, he was building the kind of royal profile that becomes incredibly useful when noise turns toxic. Unobjectionable, dependable, legitimate, calm. Now, in a monarchy battered by scandal and transition, those qualities suddenly look less dull and more like power. Not the loud kind, not the crown-wearing kind, but the kind that decides who stays close to the center when the weather changes. If that is what is happening, and the signs increasingly suggest that it is, then Prince Edward may indeed be making one of the most consequential moves of his life. Not by declaring war, not by humiliating anyone, not by breaking royal discipline, by remaining exactly what he has always been, only now in the right place at the right moment. That is how quiet people win inside old institutions. They wait until everyone mistakes patience for irrelevance. And then, when the structure begins to shift, they are already standing where the future needs them to be. Camilla may still be queen. Charles may still reign. The formal picture has not yet changed. But underneath it, the palace chessboard is already being reset. And Prince Edward, the overlooked prince, may no longer be on the edge of the board at all.